Hello, fellow Rebel Capitals. Hope you're well. I'm here with my good buddy, Lynettes Zang. They just came out with a Fed announcement. They kept rates the same, and they said they're going to reduce the amount of quantitative tightening. So I don't know if we should take that as dovish or hawkish, or we just have to wait till Jerome Powell says something. What do you think, Lynette?
Well, I think they don't really know what to do. But when he's saying that, does that mean that they're going to sell less every month of the bonds and the mortgage-backed securities that they're running off their balance sheet?
Yeah, that's what he's implying.
When I looked at financial conditions, they never really got that tight.
No, because the Fed's balance sheet doesn't even matter. That's why.
Exactly.
The banks don't care what the Fed does.
Neither do the markets anymore.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the story? We talked about it yesterday about how they got that 2% inflation target.
No, how did they get that?
You know how it's just like written in stone,
which people don't notice the inflation.
But they people, especially in the mainstream media, talk like it's some sort of just very complex intellectual algorithm that the normal average Joe and Jane just could not comprehend. Therefore, don't even question it. You don't have to, it's not too high. It's perfect. Just trust us. This is based on some serious economic analysis here. And only the 900 PhDs at the Fed could ever be this intelligent, could ever be this clever. So just don't question it. Shut up, listen, and just trust us. It's not 3%. It's not 1%. It's not 0. It's 2%. So the story behind that quickly is like 20 or 30 years ago, they were experiencing really high rates of inflation in New Zealand, like 10, 12%, something like that. So they hired a new central banker guy to come in to bring down the rates of inflation. And he said, okay, well, what should I target? And they said, well, we don't care. Just make it lower, because right now we're just getting our butt handed to us from a standpoint of politics, and our constituents are getting mad because the prices are going up so much. And he's like, okay, well, how about 1%? And they're like, oh, no, that's totally unrealistic. You can't do that. Just that'll never work. I mean, right now we're at 12%. And he's like, okay, how about 3%? And they're like, no, kind of an odd number. I don't know if we can really sell that one to the public. And he's like, okay, well, how about we just split the difference at 2%? And I said, there you go. That's it. And then Canada's like, hey, that's a great idea. And then all of a sudden, 30 years later, it's like written in stone. It's like Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with these tablets. It's just like the basis of all economic theory. So that's the backstory.
Yeah, well, somehow that just doesn't really surprise me, because, when you read a lot of their work, I have actually read where they said, we need to make this really complicated and then nobody questions us. There you go. Proof positive.
Yeah, exactly. So we can I guess we got to wait for Jerome Powell to come out. And I think he's going to have more of a hawkish tone. And the reason I'm saying that is just because you're looking at the S&P 500 and you're looking at some things like Bitcoin or the NASDAQ chart. And it looks like it's almost predicting higher rates, but the bond market, the 10-year, isn't going up that much. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But the main thing I wanted to talk to you about today is how you can great reset proof your life. And when I'm talking about the Great Reset, I'm talking about the Great Reset agenda, the World Economic Forum. You'll own nothing. You'll be happy. And this is in tandem with the central bank digital currency and all this big brother stuff, and them being able to control your life from a financial standpoint, and therefore basically control your physical life as well.
Right.
And so can you go through kind of the things that you've been doing and what you've been talking about for decades now on how people can do this, but not just do it in theory, do it in practice.
Do it in practice. And, you brought up a good point, is that I've been doing this for decades. And frankly, I had time to do it for decades. And so really, you need to be as independent and self-sufficient as possible. It's that simple. So how can you do that? Food, water, energy, security, barterability, which is silver for me, wealth preservation, which is actually gold for me, community, which has arguably become the most important issue for me, and shelter. because all of these things are what we need to be able to say no, right? Because you're independent and self-sufficient. But George, the reason why, and you've been to my farm, and so you've seen what I've done food wise, water wise, energy wise, all those other pieces. But we just don't have the luxury of time. I bought this property in 2010 when I saw what happened in 2008. I mean, the great financial crisis, 100% I knew the system had died at that point. And I also knew that food becomes the single biggest issue for people. And I mean, really, look at me. Do I look like a farmer? But
you know how to hire very good farmers. I've met
I
them.
do now, and I went through a lot to build this incredible community that I'm really anxious for you to meet too, because I think I've got the best community and the highest quality people around me. But yes, I started that by buying a piece of property, half an acre in dead central Phoenix, and planting all of it out. Most importantly, perhaps, on the exterior of the property, because people that are hungry and hopeless make choices they would not otherwise make. And so if they know they can pass and pick a pomegranate or a zucchini or whatever and feed their family, then hopefully they won't be that, they won't have that kind of mindset and destroy things.
Yeah.
But George, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So you look at all of these different pieces and you see, where am I the most vulnerable? And then you go and you work in that area and you get less vulnerable. Then you go on to the next one, the next one, the next one. The problem is I believe we are definitely running out of time. And you brought up the central banks to begin with, where we used to see them move forward in a coordinated manner. That's not happening anymore. There's a decoupling in there. And yet the financial system is incestuously intertwined. So I could be wrong, but I am 100% certain. I'll go 99.9%. Okay, just in case I'm wrong. That we are very close to the collapse and then the reset. And part of the other reason why I say that is looking at the monetary velocity chart and how that has just been on a major downward spiral since 97. But now it's on a definitely major spike up. And so to me, that's an indication that the money is changing hands quickly because of the loss of trust in the currency and in the system that's growing. Plus, watching Walmart and Costco and Amazon sell gold and silver coins to the public, what does that tell you? There's demand. People are becoming more aware and they want to do something about it. But I believe, George, that the only way to survive this at this point and have all those mantra pieces in place are by coming together in local community. So you go to where you can meet your local food purveyors or food growers and you create relationship with them. You go to the local community gardens and you get to meet like-minded people, and everybody brings what they have to share. Everybody does. And then you can survive this. And when the government, with their finger on the CBDC says, nope, you go, don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I can get through this. But I also think that it is equally, if not more important, that we come together in a global community and we create a quiet revolution where we vote with our wallets, because this is a consumer-based economy. And you know how you do that? You buy physical gold and silver that is private and out of the system. You buy sound money. And if enough people do that, maybe we have a shot at a seat at the table on the new currency and monetary system. I don't know, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, it really has to revolve around community. And it starts with, I would use the example of the Amish, because
Yeah.
the Amish produce
Exactly.
pretty much everything they consume. The problem comes in where if you have an input cost that is vital, that is denominated in something other than gold, silver, or let's say Bitcoin, because this is the
Mhm.
argument that you hear there as well. And this is why it's very difficult for a producer to price their good or service in silver or gold or something other than dollars, let's say in the United States, because you have that FX risk with your input costs, especially in global supply chains and whatnot. So
Right.
if you want to completely unplug to the point where you can choose to interact with the system or choose not to, it really starts with a community that would be similar to the Amish, where again, it's kind of a closed circular economy
Right.
where that little group of people, or maybe large group of people, is producing quite literally everything they
Yep.
consume. And I did that trip to Argentina the other day,
Yes.
where I drove across Argentina to try to kind of put it in practice. And I had Bitcoin, gold, silver, and I was trying first and foremost to transact
Mhm.
in one of those three things. That didn't work at all. And but then I was just trying to sell those assets just to get the cash, just the hyperinflating cash, just so I could use that to put gas in the car or food on the table
Mhm.
or get a hotel room. And even that was extraordinarily difficult. The silver actually was the winner by far.
Yeah.
Silver I could get almost spot
Barter.
for. We had, Josh, what did we have? We had the Canadian maple leaves, or like 1 ounce. You've probably got some there on your
I
table.
don't have any in here, but yes, I own some. So.
You know the ones that we're talking about.
Mhm.
Those were by far the easiest to sell, and we could get almost spot. The gold, they were giving us like a 65% haircut on it. Like spot
Mhm.
at the time was like 2,200, and they weren't willing to give us anything more than 1,000. So that's like not realistic. And then with Bitcoin, they didn't want that, but they wanted tethers, so we had to change the Bitcoin to tether, which is a U.S. Stable coin, and then they would give us the cash. But in talking to people that live in Argentina after I left, you can see that it would not have been easy by any stretch, but it would have been far, far, far more doable if I would have been plugged into that local community and these like
Exactly.
Facebook groups, these Telegram or groups, and they have all these kind of little monetary communities that are set up outside of the system to transact in things like Tether, but I didn't know about them. And so
Right.
one of my main takeaways is, look, if you want to set up a plan B outside of the United States, you've got to go there first for months in advance and establish those types of relationships, because at the end of the day, you can have all the gold, silver, Bitcoin if you want. If you don't have the liquidity, if no one's willing to trade with you, or you don't know the people that are willing to trade with you, then you don't get the goods and services, which at the end of the day is what we all want.
That is exactly right. And not only that, but it also is part of where we are in that trend, right? Because there's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so like I get to actually execute the strategy that I originally created for myself, and it's in layers, right? So cash is part of those, like even the hyperinflating cash, you couldn't get it, but if you had it, you'd have it, right? So it's in layers, so that wherever you are, even inside of this trend cycle, you then would have the ability to transact or
Yeah.
create. But to your point, this is what my fight is to help people create these local communities. So because that's where the trust comes from,
Yeah.
right? They know you.
Yeah, the thing is, that's the hard part, though, Lynette. That's why nobody does it, because, and this is kind of one of the pushbacks that I have, because I see people in the sound money space with gold, silver, and Bitcoin especially, and they think it's a panacea. Like, well, I don't have to do any of these things Lynette talks about. I don't have to worry about food. I don't have to worry about community, because all I need to do is stack whatever it is, stack sats or something like that. And when we go into hyperinflation and the dollar crashes, then everyone's just going to be lined up at my front door to give me whatever it is I need, on a platter, just because I have these sats on my iPhone and my Lightning wallet or something like that. I'm like, no. But that's the lazy approach. That's the panacea, the silver bullet, and people don't realize that might work in your mind and theoretically, but in practice,
it doesn't
work. Yeah.
So you see why my mantra developed the way that it did, because I knew this, having studied currency life cycles. This is what you see, and that's why I constantly say you must be as independent and self-sufficient as possible, so that if the government or the central bank say jump, you don't have to say how high. If everything you have, and you can't really eat gold and silver, you can convert it. But to your point, it depends on where you are in the trend cycle and if you're surrounded by the community. And that's why you need all of those other pieces.
Yeah.
It's so critically, community, in my opinion, is the single most important part of the mantra, because I had that luxury of time. I mean, I've been working on this urban farm for going on 14 years. And let me tell you, I'm not by nature a farmer, so I had a lot to learn before I could gather the growers that actually know what they're doing around me. So if anybody needs irrigation laid, I do know how to do that. Do I want to do it? No. But that is a barterable skill that I now have. But I have all of that other stuff. And I'll tell you something else, George. During COVID, when you couldn't get groceries, you couldn't get anything on the shelves. I mean, that was a warning everybody should have taken heed of. Right. But I'm walking around my property going, aren't I hot stuff, right? I have lots of food. It didn't matter to me at all. I had lots of toilet paper so I could help poor Jacqueline that was freaked out because she couldn't get toilet paper in the store. We remember that. And I'm thinking, aren't I smart? Aren't I great? Except then there were riots at the Capitol building, which is reasonably close to me, and riots at Fashion Square in Scottsdale, which was pretty darn shocking. And that's near my children. And I went, oh my God, because that night I slept in my bed with a gun. That is no way to live. And then that was when I saw the hole in my personal strategy, which is I didn't have a bug out location. And to your point earlier, people think, well, if I have gold and silver and I need to leave, I'm going to know right then, and I'm going to be able to get on a plane and I'm going to be able to go to South America or go wherever. And all of a sudden, everything's going to be fine because I'm going to have this community. No, it takes a lot of time and effort to put this together. And so I'm preparing, and I don't want it to happen just yet because I'd like to be even more prepared. But if something happened tomorrow, I can accommodate and feed 40 people up there with all different skill sets, doctors, carpenters, engineers, for electric, mechanics, farmers, teachers, a variety of the skill sets that we need to be okay and to be independent. And if you have a chronic illness, you need to take that into consideration as well, and make sure that you have the meds that you need stockpiled, or at the minimum, a good medicinal garden that you can pull from, and somebody that understands this stuff. We have to create that community, George. We absolutely have to. And I'm going to say that you were the one that I had the mantra before the first show that you invited me to do. And I hope you invite me to another one, by the way. But anyway, the conference that really showed me how to be responsive to the people that came to that show, because I didn't know how to do it. And I kept saying, and it was during COVID, and I kept saying to myself, I don't know how to do this. But I was standing there with you, and the first person came up excited to see you. And so I just stepped back and I just watched what you did. I have so much respect and admiration, because what you did was you looked them dead in the eyes and you reached out your hand and you gave them what they needed. and it was brilliant. And I have modeled me going and doing shows after you ever since.
Well, that's quite nice of you to say that. That's for sure. But we as someone who's on the internet and has the ability to, for better or worse, influence people, you've got to take that very seriously. And
Yes,
it starts with just one person. And at the end of the day, if we can just change one person's life for the better, I mean, isn't that a win? Regardless of how many views you have or subscribers or anything else. I mean, that's neither of us have to do this. Like, I don't have to make YouTube videos. Like, you don't have to make YouTube videos. We don't have to do this stuff. I'm sitting in St. Bart's right now, and I came back from this incredible beach just to do this interview and talk to people. It's because we want to, and we want to, at the end of the day, just help people build a life with more freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. It's going to help them, their family, improve their standard of living for whatever comes our way in the future. And what else is interesting? I think a lot of maybe the people on the stream or that watch this will think to themselves, or I think they might get a lot of pushback from their friends and family members.
Yes.
Oh, you're crazy. You're just a prepper. You're fear mongering. Nobody takes this seriously in the real world. And they try to treat you like you're some sort of tinfoil hatter. And you shouldn't be going through this, allocating any time and energy to this type of preparation. I can assure you that I'm here in St. Bart's, and you're surrounded by quite literally billionaires, and they are doing the exact same thing. Same thing. So these are, I don't know if you want to call them smart, but these are people that have been wildly successful financially within the system that we interact with daily. And these are investment bankers, the Wall Street types, all these guys, and they are down here, and every single one that I've talked to has at least thought about buying a farm in Argentina or New Zealand or something like that, just for the exact same reasons you're talking about. So it seems like the smartest people in the world are doing this, along with the people on this stream and the people that follow your channel. So never let any of the normies out there, that just don't think for themselves, tell you that what you're doing is crazy. Lynette, can you tell us kind of a step-by-step process of how can you tell us like a step-by-step process of how you built the life you've built, starting in 2010? Like, what was the first thing you did? The second thing? What were some of the mistakes that you made that if you had to do it all over again, you would change?
Let's see, how much time do we have on the mistake part? Because there's probably like this huge laundry list. Yeah. But what I did, the first thing I did was I bought this property, and it was a foreclosure. It needed some work, but I spent all of my time and my efforts and a lot of the money outside putting in gardens. The very first thing I did, I have an area in the back that I call the hothouse. It's not really a hothouse, but it's kind of off of the property. Yeah. And I put in 1, 2, 3, 4 raised beds, and then filled them with dirt, and then low beds around it. And I put in a garden, and I didn't know how to do irrigation. I didn't know how to grow food. I asked my master gardener sister. She didn't help me. So I made a tremendous amount of mistakes, which is why I think community is so important. And then I started digging up the lawn. So I would say the first area where I felt vulnerable was in food. Now, this is an old house, and there were a double door in the back that is kind of flimsy, to be honest with you. And if anybody really wanted to, all it would have been is one kick, and that door would have been open, and they would have been in. So I felt very, very vulnerable there. So after I built those beds, the next thing I did was I put in security doors in the back and in the front, in the areas where I felt vulnerable. And let's see, what did I do after that? So
now, I want to be clear before you go on, Lynette. I want to be clear for those people that are listening that might not know your backstory. What she's talking about is not some 100-acre bug out ranch in the middle of Texas.
Central
She's right in the middle of Phoenix. So what she's talking about is something that you could implement, assuming that you're on like I mean, what's the size of your lot, Lynette?
I have half an acre, and there's a house and a pool on there. So
yeah,
not that.
So if even if you had a lot that was half that size, just a normal backyard, these types of principles, or these types of the things that Lynette did, you could implement yourself. Don't think that you need 50 acres or something like that.
No, and in fact, you can even implement some sources of this if you're in a high rise, right? And you don't have much space, because you can do it. You can do aquaponics. You take a 10-gallon fish tank, throw some cheap goldfish in there. They poop. You have it on a stand, just a regular size bookcase stand, and you have trays of food and seeds like lettuce or, spinach or strawberries or tomatoes or any of that. And you have a drip system that goes up to the top and just drips it down. So in reality, I'm glad you brought that up, George, because you can do it in a very little bit of space, and and again, if you're in a high rise, because I've heard from people in a high rise where they're having issues around water and they don't know about security and this and that. And the reality is that makes your whole high rise could be a community, because if the whole high rise is having issues around water, you know what the issue is. What can you do to solve that, right? There are barrels that you can create. There are these they're as big as a water fountain, they're small, any size you want, that if you have enough humidity, which I don't in Phoenix, I do at the bug out, but you do in South America and most other places in the world other than deserts, you have humidity in the air, and this little inexpensive machine can pull the water out of the air. And guess what? Your issue around water, you can't live without food, you can't live without water. You can solve those no matter where you live. No matter where you live.
Yeah. So how did you solve that problem with the property you're on in Phoenix?
The water?
Yeah, the water issue.
Pardon?
The water issue, yeah.
The water issue? Well, I put in ponds and rain catchments.
Okay.
That's what I did here, because I couldn't use that machine down here. Now, up at the bug out, I own the water rights and I'm sitting on an aquifer. So I'm good with water up there. Down here, it's a problem. And you've seen it. I had a pool that was probably put in the 40s, because this house was built in 29. And it's huge, 75,000 gallons. And I converted that into a swimming pond to eliminate the chemicals in the water. And then, of course, it has to be filtered. But you saw the floating islands on there where we keep food. And I'll tell you, some of the best strawberries I ever managed to have this year. This is the first year.
But for drinking water, you do the rain catch?
These ponds are all the rain catchments. And
for the drinking water, what do you do for that?
Well, I have a Berkey water filter. So what to do is run the water through the Berkey water filter, and I have water to drink. Okay. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 ponds.
Yeah, in your house.
Yes, at my house, on my little tiny
urban area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So then what was the next step? And then how did you start to build community?
I got to know my neighbors, and I got to let my neighbors know, look, if you go by and you see a zucchini, don't hurt the plant, don't take it all, but you are welcome to pick it. And I definitely have neighbors that definitely come over and will do some harvesting. The community is anybody that comes in, if they want to give me a few hours of work, because there's always something to do on a farm, then they can pick. But it's also, I'm very involved with Children's First Leadership Academy, CFLA, which is a school that is specifically for shelter insecure kids, because I do think that the sooner we start to help the kids and give them hope, then the better it is. So I just get involved in community. I also have gone to meetups, and I don't know if they do it all over the world, but you can find like-minded people in these meetup groups. And that's where I learned about the aquaponics and got involved with all of that. So you just reach out. You can go to your local farmer's market and get friendly with the guy that's selling you eggs. They're going to be better eggs than you can buy in the grocery store anyway. And of course, I have my chickens, so I have fabulous eggs. But I give stuff away all the time. I'm constantly giving away food, giving away, however I can be of service. And so I have a service mindset. That's probably the best way to say, and doing these interviews, right? This is building community. Doing my show, these are building community. And now I'm actually even working on future-proofing this educational piece by bringing in younger people, because, hey, I'm going to be 70 in a few months. So I know. Thank God I have the energy and the stamina, and I'm definitely on a mission in this world. This is what I was born to do, but I'm still 70. So I have Emerald that as a protege that I'm working with her to teach her what I know and she's, I think 30 or 31 or something like that. And I've got some other things in the work in that middle realm. And so that'll be great when I get to announce that. I can't talk about it yet, but so that this information, my experience, because I've been in these markets on some level since I was like 10 years old. I need to pass this experience down. I mean, how many people were around in 71 when we went into a pure debt-based system controlled by the central banks? Not many, but I was there. I remember what that looked like and smelled like, very similar to what we're seeing today. And I was also there on Black Monday in 87. How many new stockbrokers are out there talking about the markets that only got into them even after 2008, right? They don't know what any of this looks like, smells like, tastes like, but they're going to tell you how to invest your money. Great. Well, unless they have somebody that has those experiences that are guiding them with honesty, and I'm not saying that anybody is bad. I don't think people generally have bad intentions. I think people typically have good intentions, but you don't know what you don't know that you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
I think it's just it's so incredible that you were able to go through kind of the last tail end of an interest rate cycle from the standpoint of interest rates going up till we hit like maybe a crescendo, if you want to call it that, in 80 or 81.
Yep.
And then you've seen the interest rate cycle go all the way down to, in some countries, negative. And
exactly.
I think rates will probably go down again, probably not to where they were, but I think as you know, the rates never, ever, ever go up in a straight line, and they never go down in a straight line. It's always just this kind of roller coaster ride, and you just see the trend, and you get higher highs and higher lows, or the opposite. So I definitely think that we've bottomed out and a trend up, but I think the next move is probably down. But what's great about that is you have the ability to see both sides of the cycle in terms of, okay, this is something that I can actually see this as a realistic outcome. Where for most people, they've only seen rates go down, 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 down. So they can't even conceive of rates going up, 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 up as far as a trend and how that would translate into asset prices. I mean, everyone says that, just pile into stocks. And well, maybe, but if you look at 73, 74, the stock market went down by 50% in nominal terms. So when you adjust for inflation, I mean, that was a huge, huge move down in real terms. And that's what can happen in that type of environment. And most people just can't get their head around that.
Exactly. And I was there on Black Monday in 87. And it was the best day. I was a new stockbroker. I was just about a year into it. And so because they don't really teach you how to read or understand the technical language of the market. What they teach you, and I was with Shearson, who at that time had the best training program on the street. And they told me they put 250 grand in me. And I believe it. It was a 2.5 year training program. Doesn't mean I wasn't doing things between that, but they spent a lot of money to teach me how to sell an intangible. Invaluable education, mind you. But he didn't want me to understand how the market moved. So you're talking to a stockbroker or a consultant or whatever they want to title themselves, and they don't know, right? They're just parroting what they're told to sell, or it's based upon commission or what have you. And as a new stockbroker, I personally was not comfortable with that. So that Black Monday, best day I could have ever been a stockbroker. I went out for lunch, normal day. I even remember what I was wearing, went out for lunch, came back, I don't know if I can say that, all Hades had broken loose. And you'd walk in and there were 2 large offices with big TVs on the wall. And, there was usually like a half a dozen men in each room, typically. They were packed. The phones were just ringing off the hook. I go in the back where all the stockbrokers' offices were. They were literally, not figuratively, and I'm not kidding about this, under their desks. They were not taking phone calls. I was taking phone calls because all I had done is put people in treasuries and told them to go buy gold because I couldn't sell gold, but I knew they needed to have it. So nobody calling me upset about anything. But I happened to have a client that owned a small savings and loan in Crockett, Texas. And they couldn't and they were all of these, he had all of these oil wildcatters and these very aggressive guys that understood the markets way better than I did. But I was the only stockbroker that he could get a hold of. And I'll never forget, he had the squawk box in the middle of his table because nobody had personal computers or at that time they were called Quotrons, where you just had the tickers that were going across. So they needed me to tell them what was going on. And they're going, what's happening with this? What's happening with that? And so I'm just pulling up and they all became my clients. These are the people that taught me how to read the technical language of the market. Because and by the way, I had just gone off salary on October 1st. Right? But we would buy stuff on Monday, we would sell it on Friday, and they explained everything to me, and we made so much money in that volatile market. But the best part about it is, number one, everything was crashing. I don't care how safe and sound you thought it might be. Everything was crashing. And the other part that was really so critically important, it was after that they came out with a plunge protection team.
Yeah, so that means the Fed is dropping rates whenever they see a problem.
Yep, and buying stock. I mean, doing it quietly, right? But supporting the markets so that you don't have a major crash like that again, because it was like 25% in like this heartbeat.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Yeah, although, I mean, we saw some pretty massive moves during, in general, or broadly speaking, over 6 months during the GFC, because I know the S&P went down by 50% then.
Oh yeah,
as well, if not more. I think it bottomed out around 700 or so. And then during COVID, holy cow, there was some wild days there. Obviously we didn't have a 25% day, but I think we might have had. Did we have like 10, 12%? I think we did, didn't we?
We have like 12 or 13%. I mean, it was scary.
Yeah, so the plunge protection team doesn't always work. We see that right now at the Bank of Japan too, Lynette. They came in and tried to quote unquote raise rates. They did it by like 10 basis points or something like that, just bring it out of negative. And they tried to do that to prop up the currency, just kind of not wanting to risk the bond market over there. And the market basically gave them the middle finger. And they said no. And the yen went straight past 150. And now we see them trying to intervene just to keep it below 155. And I don't think they're even going to be able to do that. So that's a great example of the central banks not always able to keep things under control.
That is such an incredibly good and important point, because really with the Bank of Japan, the currency against the dollar has gone full circle from what happened back in the 70s, right? And what was happening then is we were transitioning into a new system, which is what's happening right now. We're transitioning into a new system. But what about all of those derivatives? We didn't have all of those derivatives, those big unsubstantiated bets back then. We have them now. And so for the markets, I mean, I was blown away. I think it was June of 22 when Fed Chair Powell kept saying, okay, we're just going to raise interest rates 50 basis points, 50 basis points, 50 basis points. And then they came out and they did 75 basis points. So the markets then knew that they could no longer trust. Remember that added, don't fight the Fed?
Yeah.
The Fed say, forward guidance. We're going to tell you what we're going to do so you can get into a position to take advantage of it. Why they gave away that layer of confidence at that time, I couldn't tell you, other than maybe they're setting up this next crisis. But quite honestly, I think Wall Street could easily overwhelm the Fed's ability to bail anything out. And I'm not really convinced in my mind that they want to.
Yeah, and see, I think the big tail risk there, which may sound counterintuitive, is the dollar going up, and more against other currencies. And
right.
I mean, I think that you could. I mean, look at what's happening. It's not just Japan; it's Brazil, it's South Korea, it's obviously Turkey, Argentina. That goes without saying. But all of these it's starting to become like the developed economies, not just the frontier markets or the emerging markets, where they're just having quite literally a currency crisis against the dollar. And you kind of scratch your head and you say, I mean, does this end with like a Plaza Accord 2.0? Because you were right there in the mix, right around the Plaza Accord 1.0. That was what, 84 or 85, something
like that.
Yeah. How do you think through kind of the Plaza Accord 2.0 thing with what we see going on in the dollar overseas?
Well, I think what's really interesting is, while we keep hearing about deglobalization, and I was there at the start of globalization, and that was all the conversation back in the 80s was globalization, right?
Yeah.
While everybody's looking at the deglobalization, what we're really seeing underneath, whether anybody's paying attention or not, is that the monetary system is getting more and more integrated. And I think that's how the first part of this ends, right? I mean, I think there are multiple parts to it, but I still continue to believe that it will be the IMF's SDR that brings all of the local currencies together under one umbrella, one world currency. And I think that's really where they're directing it, into a digital control where they have full control of everybody's actions and movements. And if you're not independent and you don't have sound money, you're not going to have any choices. But I see this going to a one world control system. And it's much easier to control things from one place than it is from a whole bunch of places. So that's what I see happening with the currency system.
And my concern with that, Lynette, is that people, not only will they not fight back against what you're saying, which is just basically a global CBDC, but they'll request it. Like they'll demand it.
And that's what they're setting up.
It's just like, you go back to COVID, and there was 50% of the population of the United States that were demanding that the government lock them in a cage. They were saying, lock us in a cage, make it illegal for us to walk our dog on the beach, or else we're going to vote you out of office. And so most people think that the government is going to thrust this CBDC upon us. Like we're not going to have a choice, and it's just this authoritarian regime that's going to come in and demand that we all start using this CBDC.
No.
And I think it's going to be the opposite. I think it's going to be the people saying, "Hey, we want." They're not going to call it a CBDC. They're not going to call it FedCoin. They're not stupid enough to do that because they know the PR around it. But what they're going to do is they're going to start rolling out features. They're going to say, "Look, now all of a sudden, instead of getting 50 basis points in your checking account at Wells Fargo, you can just move your account over to the Federal Reserve and we can pay you the exact same interest rate that we pay Jamie Dimon, 5.25%. Who wouldn't want that? And oh, by the way, you don't have to have your dollar assets as a liability of XYZ commercial bank that can go bust, which was what we've seen since 2023. You can go ahead and move your dollar assets to the Fed's balance sheet. And now all of a sudden, we don't have to worry about the Fed going bust. That's not possible. And then we've solved this problem. Who doesn't want that? So higher interest rates, less risk. And then next time you go down to Mexico or whatever, you don't even have to exchange your dollars for pesos. Or if they do it, they'll do it free of charge because it's just central bank to central bank. And, and all of these neat features that, 24/7 settlement, 365. And the people are going, wow, this is amazing. Lynette and George were warning me about, dealing with the Fed's balance sheet and the centralization of the monetary system. And what do they know? I mean, they're crazy tinfoil hatters. I see nothing but upside. This is look, by the way, Lynette, I can transfer you dollars just with a QR code, just right over the webcam. Isn't that just absolutely amazing? And they're going to say, we want more of this, not less. And then what's going to happen is they're going to integrate those network effects to where people become dependent upon it, just like people are dependent on their cell phones. And that's when they start rolling out the draconian, Big Brother, 1984, social score, Orwellian stuff that we're worried about. What are your views on that?
Okay. Well, number one, that's why I said earlier, and I kind of go like this, because the assumption that everybody makes is that they want to postpone this. And I think that what I'm seeing with this decoupling with, that consistent loss of confidence at every level, except for public confidence, that they still have that. But there will be this huge crisis. And I think that COVID was a test to see what they could get away with. And so there will be this huge crisis. And I agree with you 100%. People are going to say, save me, save me, save me. And they're going to welcome that in at first. And yeah, there'll be all sorts of great features until they get you firmly entrenched in there. And you think you don't need any of this other stuff or the food, water, etc. And then they have you by the cojones. Yeah. So I can see that. But what I'm also seeing is that there is a rising discomfort among the public, hence Costco, Walmart, Amazon selling gold and silver coins. I mean, I don't think that's the best place to buy them, but the point is that the public is becoming more aware, and that's my hope. If you and I can reach enough people at that level, we don't need 100% of the population to get it. We just need a really vocal and dedicated, maybe, 3%, 5%, something like that. And then I think we have a shot. So I 100% agree with that's their plan. And what they're trying to do is create a controlled implosion so that they can remain in power. But I'm not convinced that they're going to be successful at that. I'm just not convinced.
I always, because the most draconian thing I have ever seen, the most authoritarian thing I've ever seen in my life were the lockdowns. By far. For me, there's not even a close second. So I always try to look at things through that lens. And I look at Phoenix as an example. They're like 4 million people or something like that. And I just think about if there would have been, let's say, 10% of the population, so 400,000 people, when they did the whole lockdown thing, they wouldn't have even needed guns.
Nope.
Or they wouldn't have needed violence, anything like that. All they would have had to do is 400,000 people would have just had to say, no, I'm not shutting down my store. No, I'm not going to prevent my kids from going to school. No, I'm not going to stay indoors and not walk my dog. And you can take the military, the police, the government. Yes, they have all the power. Yes, they have all the guns. Yes, they have all these things. But at the end of the day, if there's 400,000 people in Phoenix that just say no, there's absolutely nothing the government can do about it.
Voila. Voila. But I'll tell you something else, just based on the lockdowns. Look at what happened in China, which has the most control over its population as any country in the world. And when they pushed the population past a certain point, they stopped complying, and the Chinese government changed the rules.
Yeah, because they've read history. They've read about the French Revolution. They read about those guillotines. And and no matter how power hungry they are, they don't want anything to do with the guillotines.
Exactly. And so that takes us all the way back to community again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All roads lead to community and people coming together and voting with our wallets. This is a peaceful revolt. Just buy gold and silver and hold it in your possession, and it becomes invisible. A peaceful revolt. I'm not so sure that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies really meet that criteria, because I don't know, George, do you really think that Bitcoin or these other cryptocurrencies are really outside of the system?
Well, I tell you what I know for sure, and that's that you can move a massive amount of purchasing power across borders.
Yes.
And that in and of itself has tremendous, tremendous, tremendous value.
Yep.
And so, like, I was trying to think this through with my good friend, Chris McIntosh, when I got done with the whole Argentina deal. And I'm like, let's just say that I'm an American and I want a plan B outside the United States because I don't want to be held hostage if the government comes in and freezes my bank account because I participate in some sort of protest against medicine mandates.
Right.
Or the trucker protest in Canada or something like that.
Right. Great example.
And so let's just say you want $250,000 outside of the system. How on earth do you do that? Because obviously silver is not a solution, because how are you going to transport that down to Argentina? It's not going to happen. And gold, it's going to be challenging.
There's gold, and then there's gold. So it really, you can't lump anything into.
What was the difference between those two things you just
showed? By the way, do we notice these?
Yeah, diamonds.
And these are sapphires and diamonds. But so yes, there are all sorts of ways that you can move money as long as it's movable money. And yeah, you can do a coin for $8 million if you want, 15 million.
Oh, I see. I was wondering what the difference was between those two things that you showed.
This is raw. This will run with bullion, and so you'll need lots of these. But you could do it with one coin if you wanted to. And I can.
Oh, I see. I
see. It, and it's got a $20 face value on it.
But it's collectible.
Correct. Back to those wealthy that we talked about. If you look at the chart on the ultra rarities, which would have $8 million, $15 million 1 ounces of gold, that's at all-time highs. And this is a physical only market. This is a spot market plus physical. So there could be a little premium. This is only physical, which is a true supply and demand market.
Yeah, but see, then it still goes back to community. Because let's say you had an $8 million coin or something like, or just a $250,000 coin, and that's what it was worth at Sotheby's or whatever. You would have to find that very, very, very specific buyer or auction house or something like that in Argentina in order to have that liquidity, or you might as well have a paperweight. Because I can promise you that the guys that I was going to, all the gold dealers in there, they would not have even bought that. Like there's no way. And then the problem that you run into, Lynette, is let's say it's a $250,000 coin and you sell it. What are you going to sell it for? Because let's say that you're going to sell it for the local currency. Now you've got a hyperinflating currency that's losing 20% of its value every single month. So what the hell do you buy with it that quickly. You see what I'm saying? It becomes a
Maybe you buy that bunker that your billionaires are buying and you do a direct trade. Because if they've got a piece of real estate that they want to sell, as example, if they are a corporation, they're going to have to do it for the paper, right? But if they are an individual that is well aware of what's happening with the paper, and I'm not saying that's the only asset they have, but they want to liquidate it or they need to liquidate it or whatever, really, they're not going to want the paper. They'd rather have this.
Yeah, but if you have that and you need the purchasing power, then you're
well, you don't just have one.
I'm sorry?
You don't just have one. That goes back to the layers, right?
Yeah.
It's the different layers that you have. That $8 million coin would be a legacy coin, quite honestly. So I don't have a coin for $8 million.
So you'd have 250,000. Let's just use that as the example. But you'd have that in multiple different, between jewelry, between the one coins, the other coins, to where once you get down there and get integrated into and set up this network and all these relationships with people who value those things, then you can go ahead and figure it out from there. Then the only thing that really you would need to buy time would be some purchasing power to get you by for like 6 months, in which case you could have hundreds. Like if you just take $10,000 down in hundreds. Something that was interesting, Lynette, is the dollar is the primo as
right.
far as what they want down there. But what's fascinating is the $100 bill, the crisp brand new $100 bill, actually gets a much higher exchange rate than even a 20 or a 50. Isn't that weird? That there's more liquidity and more of a premium on actual $100 bills. So that could be one of those layers that you're referring to.
It is part of the layer, 100%. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I mean, that's the way I approach everything. That's why when you said, well, how did you build, this, my little place here, and what were the steps? Layers. Right? All in layers, so that no matter what's going on, you have the ability to address it. And quite honestly, if it was a difference between me, buying a child out of prison or feeding my family, and all they were going to give me was 50% of the current market value, so what? I have lots of them, right? You're still going to make that choice. But, this is better for food and the different sizes. I like dimes because it's easier to put 2 dimes together than break a quarter in half. But layers, yeah, you're going to want some of that hyperinflating cash. And in the US and maybe elsewhere as well, you want it when it's considered cash in the wild, which is cash without chips in it that match the interest rates that they're going to, because I think we will see negative rates again. I really do, because they've already gotten all the purchasing power. Now they got to attack your principal. And that's what negative rates are about, attacking your principal and financial repression. So, yeah.
In a way, they already do. I don't want to go too far off topic here, but I was doing a video yesterday and I still can't believe what I looked up was accurate. Someone needs to fact check me on this for sure. But I was looking at the interest rate that JP Morgan is paying you right now on checking accounts, JP Morgan Chase or whatever.
Yeah.
And from what I saw, it was like 5 basis points still.
Oh, that's nothing.
Like 5 basis points. And then I read, it might not even that. It might have been like 1 basis point. I think that's actually what it was, 1 basis point. And so then I read all of their fees. Like they've got a $25 a month fee for this, blah, 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 fee for that, fee for that, fee for that, fee for that. And I'm like, wait a minute, if they're only paying you 1 basis point a month, this is effectively negative interest rates, because you're paying them at the end of the month to have an account there. So how is this not like 1 or 2% negative interest rates? It's right now, while the Fed funds at 5.25%.
Which is what they're getting on any excess reserves. But I like the fact that it's not really your money anyway, because they sweep it in sub accounts in their name, and then they can take that equity, do anything they want with it. And let's face it, you look at the Office of the Comptroller of the Currencies, the OCC's quarterly report on derivatives in the FDIC insured banks, which is a joke, another story. And most of their income is derived from trading.
Yeah.
But they're getting a lot of money, to your point, on paying a basis point, but getting 5.2.
Yeah. And I would even argue, I would take it one step further. And the majority of their income isn't even off of trading. It's off the fees for trading. They're just total rent seekers. I mean, it's just so it's so darn obvious. Lynette, tell us about your new YouTube channel and website and everything.
I'm so excited because I think I love freedom, and I have freedom now to do whatever I believe is the right thing to do. And so on the 14th of May, we will be open for business at LynetteZang.com. And there's a countdown clock on there right now. But you can find most of my work right now on both YouTube and Twitter at the Lynette Zang, and Instagram and Facebook at Lynette Zang. So we are executing the strategy. We are in a position, we'll be selling gold and silver very shortly.
So I didn't even know that you're doing that. That's what you meant.
Pardon?
That's what you meant by saying you're open for business? I didn't realize you were starting a gold company. I had no idea.
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
So
I am, because I know people need this stuff, but we're also going to help do the strategy in the right way.
Okay.
We're going to be doing that and many other things, because in my channel, we haven't released this yet, so I can't really talk about it, but we want to help everybody anywhere develop those communities, both local as well as global, and get prepared with food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. So we're here to facilitate that community piece, but we're really all of us here to be of service. And George, wait till you come the next time and you meet all the team members. You've met some of them, but this is the highest quality level of human beings that I've ever had the privilege of working with, period, end of discussion. It's fabulous.
Oh, that's good.
Very exciting.
That's exciting. I didn't even realize you were doing that. So
I have to. People need me, Lynette, and they need strategy.
I have a question for you. How do you have so much energy? You were saying that you're 70 soon, and I mean, I want to have
Lynette,
that.
You need to go on the next road trip to freedom with us. We're going from Istanbul to Baku in Azerbaijan.
You mean, George? Because I will go with you.
That would be legendary.
That would be so fun.
Epic. That would be epic.
when are we going? I'm ready. I have my global entry. I can go anywhere. I'm ready.
We're planning the beginning of September, because the thing that we're doing at the end, the last thing that we did, Doug Casey in Buenos Aires, and that was our goal. That was our objective, is to get there. But this time our objective is a little bit more, it's a little different. And that's to go to the Formula One race in Baku, and that's kind of
through that the second time you came here. Remember?
Formula One?
You had that fancy fast car. You just about scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, we went for a little bit of a drag race, and I think I got Lynettes Zang going 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds.
I think my whole face went back like that.
All right, on that bombshell, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Lynette, it's always a pleasure. Can't wait to do it again.
Always. We'll be in touch.
All right.
Love you, George.